T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis. Mission.
Houston, we have a problem. We're about to embark on the greatest documentary on the 20th century space race, and we don't have a title sequence to start it off.
Roger that. I'll play one right away.
As tensions grew between the Soviet Union and the United States in the late 20th century, there was an increased pressure to stay ahead of the other in the race to outer space. Both sides competed with one another to make the greatest advancements in science and technology. In order to complete this challenging task, spies were sent to the other country to scout secrets and new strategies. These actions marked merely the beginning of the competition to control the endless vacuum that was space.
In 1946, the U.S. military achieved the first high-altitude flight in New Mexico. Even with the primitive computing technology, the rebuilt German V-2 rocket that was used reached an altitude of over 70 miles. Building on the enthusiasm that was generated from this historic event, the United States launched its first rocket just 12 days later. This was at the height of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, the battle between capitalism and communism.
However, when the Soviet Union beat the United States into space by launching the satellite Sputnik on October 4, 1946, Americans realized the severity of the space race and a possible nuclear threat from the USSR. Astronaut Frank Borman remembered.
I was teaching at West Point when Sputnik was announced. The Cold War was a real thing, and there is a very great concern of a nuclear exchange. And all of a sudden, this country, that was our real enemy, had jumped the gun and launched a satellite.
News coverage filled with sensationalist reports, further fueling the fire of the Cold War. Reporters mentioned the new challenge to George Kennan's notion of containment that threatened with the possible spread of communism around the globe. With headlines that read, "Why did the U.S. lose the race?" focusing on the United States Department of Defense and armed forces, it created mass hysteria that pressured the U.S. to advance and compete with the Soviet Union.
As a result, a year later, the United States successfully produced the first American satellite. Weighing only 30 pounds, Explorer 1 was launched into orbit by the Army on a Jupiter-C rocket. The satellite contained several scientific instruments that discovered the radiation belt surrounding the Earth, giving the United States a major boost in Cold War confidence. Tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union heightened as the race to reach the moon reached the climax.
Meanwhile, in the midst of an industrial post-World War II boom, President John F. Kennedy declared that Americans needed to be willing to give their blood, sweat, and tears to achieve the common goal of reaching the moon. That sacrifice came in the form of higher taxes imposed on an already crazed public. Still, many Americans were captivated by the space race and were willing to pay what it took to satisfy their curiosity.
Through the generous contributions of the American people, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, was able to develop high-tech technology for launches into space. Inspired by John Jockenhauser's first known spaceship in 1453, NASA designed the modern spaceship, and this allowed for humans to make their presence known in outer space. The Soviet Union's Luna 2 was the first spacecraft to land on the moon in 1959. In 1966, Surveyor 1 became the first American spacecraft to soft land on the moon. The spaceship transmitted more than 11,000 high-resolution photographs before its energy sources were depleted. Later, in 1969, on Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin Jr. became the first human beings to set foot on another world. Experts still consider this to be the single greatest technological achievement of the 20th century.
When the Challenger exploded in 1986, there came an increased need to be able to fix space equipment while it's still in space. The International Space Station, ISS, was built as a result and became the largest structure made by humans in space. It acts as a lab for new technologies and observations, flying at a speed of 175,000 miles per hour at 248 miles above the Earth's surface.
Other inventions to aid the astronauts in space included various living and communication supplies. John Glenn was the first American to eat in space aboard Friendship 7 in 1962. It was not known if ingestion and absorption of nutrients were possible in a state of zero gravity. Glenn's consumption of applesauce packed in a tube and sugar tablets with water demonstrated that people could eat, swallow, and digest food in a weightless environment. In addition, with the $1 million NASA spent per year developing new technology, they invented the first ballpoint pen to diminish the amount of problems caused by zero gravity. Meanwhile, the Soviets saved money and just used pencils. Another invention to aid astronauts was the spacesuit. The original Mercury spacesuits did not include its own life support system. Instead, it featured a hose that connected the astronaut to the oxygen supply in the spacecraft.
As America advanced in space technology, their confidence grew in size. Citizens continued to contribute enthusiastically to dedicating funds for research. The development of the television rocketed public appeal to new altitudes. Astronauts became known as American heroes, and men and women came to live vicariously through them. On the other hand, the Soviets became the model of villainy, an image that further harmed the reputation of communism and placed capitalist America ahead of the world game.
As a result of the boost in enthusiasm, SkyHigh Records were broken. Since Alan Shepard's 1961 spaceflight that lasted a total duration of 15 minutes, which was also the shortest human spaceflight mission, many other astronauts and satellites have earned themselves a spot in the Space Hall of Fame. The Hubble Space Telescope measured Earth's smallest and farthest cosmic neighbor at 13.4 billion light-years away. The previous distance was 13.2 billion, and the seemingly minute difference matters. In addition, the Apollo 13 crew in 1970 traveled a record-breaking 248,655 miles from the Earth as they rounded the dark side of the Moon.
Just before the 15th anniversary of continuous human presence on the International Space Station, U.S. astronaut and commander of the current Expedition 45 crew, Scott Kelly, broke a spaceflight record. On Friday, October 16th, Kelly began his 383rd day living in space, surpassing U.S. astronaut Mike Binks' record of 382 cumulative days. Another amazing feat was performed by Alan Eustace, who broke Felix Baumgartner's record jump from the stratosphere. Eustace fell more than 25 miles in 15 minutes, smashing the record set 2 years ago by Baumgartner. These two men have earned their spot in space history next to other great astronauts such as Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, John Glenn, and Sally Ride.
In the more recent years, the space race has largely become a hot seller in consumerism. Many new products center their advertisement campaigns around space exploration. Candy manufacturers name their sweets after famous discoveries such as the infamous Milky Way bars, Orbit gum, Mars bars, moon pies, and Starburst candy. Other inedible products included moon sand, Star Wars action figures, and moon shoes. The space race provided an easy source of public interest for large companies.
To further delve into the consumerism society that the space competition created, NASA worked closely with Disney in October of 2015 to produce online interactive activities that teach children the science behind the Toy Story character Buzz Lightyear and his 450-day voyage in space to the International Space Station. The Toy Story franchise highlights the fictional position of the Space Ranger for Star Command, while also commenting on the non-fictional part of how extensive space actually is, mainly through Lightyear's catchphrase, "To infinity and beyond." There's also some truth behind the science of the Pixar movie. For example, the character Buzz Lightyear is named after astronaut Buzz Aldrin himself, and the astronomical unit of measure stretching about 6 million miles, as a homage to the astronaut's achievements in the 20th century. Disney has clearly done their research on NASA's accomplishments in order to subliminally educate younger generations. Way to go, Disney!
The space race was also a hot topic in the movie industry. Many movies were produced revolving around the exploration of the solar system. One such movie was Armageddon. In the movie, after discovering that an asteroid the size of Texas was going to impact Earth in less than a month, NASA recruits a misfit team of deep core drillers to save the planet. Another successful production was Interstellar in 2014. Here, a team of explorers travel through a wormhole in space in an attempt to ensure humanity's survival. The movie Gravity stars famous actress Sandra Bullock and actor George Clooney. Bullock plays a brilliant medical engineer on her first shuttle mission, with Clooney as a veteran astronaut in command of his last flight before retiring. But on a seemingly routine spacewalk, disaster strikes. As fear turns to panic, every gulp of air eats away at what little oxygen is left. But the only way home may be to go further out into the terrifying expanse of space.
With motivation from the Soviet Union to advance at a faster pace, the United States proved to revolutionize the future of science and technological innovations through funded programs like NASA that proliferated nationalism. The United States asserted its superiority in science by manufacturing more advanced space technology and aggrandizing its economy, and this competition paved the way for future progress in telecommunication. Throughout the 20th and 21st century, astronauts and scientists laid the foundation for ensuing success of space voyages, thus pursuing American brilliance on a universal scale.
America continues to grow as a world power, edged along by the dominance both on the Earth and to infinity and beyond.